So good morning. You're watching Dr. Scott Fox from Sixth Sense Acupuncture. I'm a registered acupuncturist in Chinese herbalist medicine doctor. And you're watching the Get Busy Livin podcast. And we have a wonderful guest today. It's Caryn White. She's a life coach. So Caryn, thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated for spending the time this morning.
No worries. No, thank you. It's good to be here.
Because you're in Singapore, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm in Singapore, so it's a little bit earlier.
Yeah. It's 7 a.m., aren't you? It's 9 a.m. here.
Just after that. So I think, thankfully, the kids are on holidays, but my husband's just getting up for work. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's a weekend. It's good.
Excellent. I wanted to ask you our first question. So, what gets you out of bed every day, Caryn?
The alarm. No, not most days. I was thinking about this when I was like, yeah, most days it's like, other than the alarm, I love the days when I can sleep in. But I think it's just that for me, it's like I've been in the corporate world before, so it's been a couple of years out of that, and there were times when I would dread getting up. And I'm not saying every day that I jump out of bed with a box of unicorns and stuff flying around, but it is that sense of just I enjoy the day's gonna hold. Like there's a sense of just, wow, I get to get up and I get to do what I love doing and enjoy what I'm doing. And there are days which are really tough, like I might not be feeling well, but I think there's never really a question now, which is really nice to be in that place where you just want to get up. You want to see what's ahead of you. You want to kind of get the day started. Kind of like what you say, right? You shared with me about the Get Busy Living. Like you have a choice, I think, what you do. You could stay in bed and you can moan about the world or whatever's going on, or you can get up and try and do something about it, or just do something and see where that leads.
Yeah, that's right. I do. Yeah, I'm the same. Some days I just think, oh, no, this is not happening. But then 5 minutes later, it's like, what are you doing? We've got stuff to do today. Hurry up.
Yeah, and you enjoy doing that stuff, right? And it's like you actually enjoy doing that stuff most of the time. So why not get up?
Exactly. So tell us. So you're a women's life coach. You're into women's health, yeah? Is that right?
No, women's mental health, probably more so, like in terms of profession. So I don't have any background in terms of like nutrition or in that respect, but my focus is really helping professional women in the corporate space. Obviously, I've come from that space as well, and I've gone on a journey to sort of figure out who I really love working with. And though I'm really fortunate to have different clients from different backgrounds, I really want to support professional women in the corporate space, whether they want to stay or whether they want to go. I'm sort of there for what choice they make, because I guess there was a time, lots of people say when they're in the corporate, they go, oh my goodness, I hate that now. But I really loved it at some point. Like there were a lot of years that I really enjoyed being in the corporate space. And I think there's a lot of people that love it there still, but maybe they're in a place where they need a change, and it might be promotion. It might be, wanting to negotiate a salary pay rise, change the organization they work for, the type of job they do. Or they may be in a position I was in, which was, I actually don't want to be here anymore. I want to see what's next for me. And that might mean starting your own business or completely changing your lifestyle and what you're doing. So that's who I help.
Excellent. So leading that, well, you've led me into the next question, really.
Excellent.
So that's awesome, because we don't talk enough about mental health, which is it's weird. Like we're supposed to tell each other that the government wants to, the Australian government anyway. They want us to talk about mental health openly and more often, but I can't say, Caryn felt down yesterday, or Dr. Scott felt down 2 days ago.
Because that's seen as negative, isn't it?
Well, it's privacy, the Privacy Act. See? Yeah. So it's very strange that they want us to talk about it, but not openly. Can't
So how do
pick people out. Can't pick people out, basically.
So do you mean like in a workplace as such? Technically, you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to mention that because
Yeah.
it's privacy. Wow.
Yeah.
That makes
So that
it
you can't pick.
challenging
You
then for
can't.
people to, yeah.
But everyone goes through those self-doubt moments. Like even the people who are making the rules, they do it too. They can't say that they don't.
No,
I
absolutely.
mean, everyone does. So it's very strange. It's very, very strange. So that's great that you talk that you bring that up, because mental health
Yeah.
is
That's what's happened here. Was that me or you?
I don't know. I got no idea.
I'm sitting there going,
I think it might have been me. I've got a couple of bars. All right. So
we're at the mental health
yeah,
part.
yeah,
That's
mental
all.
health. So because uh, especially it's getting worse, and uh, it's fantastic that women like to talk about it more often.
Yeah, I think you're breaking up a bit, Dr. Scott. Can you hear me?
Uh,
Oh, there you go. It's breaking up. I think it's,
and
yeah.
that's fantastic that you're endorsing that behavior, in that getting women to talk about their mental health is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
So that leads me into the next question, which is, what got you into coaching?
Yeah, that's I think we mentioned just when we jumped on this initially, you can talk about that forever. So I'm gonna do my best to bring it back to some key moments in my journey. And I think the best way to do that is I could say this is what happened, like this is the process I went through, but I think it's best to go back to like to picture the moment like in 2020. I think we can all draw upon that for all of us, like where we're at, like early 2020. So at that time, I was living in Shanghai in China and with my family. And as you can imagine, in that sort of around Chinese New Year time, it was just, obviously it was the coronavirus as such at the time was really blowing up in China. It hadn't yet touched a lot of the rest of the world. It was mainly concentrated to, or we were aware of it, and I guess in that area. And I think within a few days of coming back from our Chinese New Year holiday, the kids' schools got closed. And so we were like, right, we're going back to New Zealand, because that's originally where I'm from. So we went back to New Zealand, but then I was working full time at the time for a company that was global, but based at the main job was sort of over Asia Pacific. Anyway, we got home within 3 days of getting home. The senior vice president, who was my manager of the region, he suddenly passed away. So we had this chaos which was happening in our personal life, coming back, not sure when we were going to come back to China, and believing we'd be back in like 2 months' time because things would blow over. And then within a few days, my manager, who was a huge, obviously, part of our business, passed away. So there was this kind of like chaos in all parts of it. Then within, I would say, probably about a month's time, New Zealand was getting close to going into lockdown. My husband was made to go back to China out of his work. And we believed we would be back with him in a couple of weeks. But then within a couple of weeks, China closed its borders. The kids and I were left in New Zealand with my family. So we were very fortunate. But at the same time, my husband was then in China. So there wasn't really an option for us to go, hey, we're done, him come back to New Zealand, because no one knew what was happening in the world right then. We had to focus on having jobs, obviously, all that kind of thing. So if you can imagine, we were in New Zealand thinking in like a couple of months we'd go back. But then, as we know, things didn't quite work out the way that we hoped. Within a few months, as New Zealand came out of their first lockdown, people started to get back to normal. But the kids and I felt like we were just in limbo, because our lives and everything was back in China. And obviously my husband as well and their dad. So I think it was probably about 3 to 4 months in, I was, essentially miserable. I was just surviving. We were dealing with the loss of my manager. That turned our work into chaos, dealing with my team, helping them, supporting each other. I couldn't connect with anyone face to face because obviously with the pandemic happening, there was no ability to travel anywhere. It was really, really hard. And I think there was about probably 3 or 4 months in that I started thinking I've got to do something. So I started listening to podcasts and TED Talks just to get out of the house and go for walks. Even though we were by the beach and stuff, I just felt really claustrophobic. And through that, I started listening to this mindset sort of person, and just realized that a lot of what I was thinking was everyone else's fault was actually for me to make changes. So that was probably the start of that journey of really realizing that a lot came back to what I wanted to do, which was really interesting. So fast forward to mid-October, we finally were able to get back into China, which was like obviously a bit longer than 2 weeks or 2 months that we thought. We got back into China. When I got back, within 2 weeks, we had quarantine and everyone went about their way. Husband went back to work, kids went to school, and I was back at work. But everyone had changed, I'd changed. And when I went back to the office, I didn't feel like I was part of it. It wasn't their fault. I just felt different. They'd gone through a lot themselves. So that was really hard. And a lot had changed in my workplace in terms of managers and all that kind of thing as well. And I just didn't really gel with me, but I didn't think I had an option. And it wasn't until January the following year when I went to a networking event and they were doing personal development plans. And we were sitting there and I was next to a friend and we wrote down, we had to write down all our skills and all our qualifications and all those kind of things that we knew, our strengths, our weaknesses. And then there was a key question where the lady said to us, write down jobs that you want to do. So me being me, wrote down all the things I'm qualified for. So at the time I was a commercial manager. So I was writing down, commercial manager, I was writing down accountant, analyst, all these things that I'd done in the past, all the jobs I'd had. And though I didn't love them, this is what I thought I could do, right? And then my friend next to me, she was a marketing director background. And I looked over at her paper and I saw she had written down surf lifesaver, ski instructor, nutritionist. And I remember going, are you qualified for these things? And she's like, no. I'm like, oh. And she goes, but it says you can write down what you want to do. And I was like, and I looked back at my paper with all these, which now were really boring and not interesting to me, roles. I just went and looked back at hers and I'm like, I can do what I want to do. And so I scrubbed out everything I'd written and I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I want to do? And I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. So I started to write down things which I was kind of interested in, mental health for my kids, helping with my kids and these kind of things. And then the lady facilitating it, she was talking to someone to my side and I heard her say, oh, my next step is to be a coach. And I was like, coach, what's that? Like I'd done coaching within my work role with my team, but I'd often been told that I spent too much time on my team. So I'd been made to feel like it was bad to spend a lot of time with your team. So I'd never considered to be more than that. Like it was just something internally we did in corporate. And then I wrote it down and that's where it started. That was the point where I realized I had a choice and it kind of got exciting. And you know what happens, right? Once you get an idea, you start to see a lot of things. And the person I was following in my podcast I was listening to quite a lot, this person was focused around coaching and helping coaches as well. So it sort of became this, just opened up a world. And that's when it started. And yeah, I'm so happy I went down that path. And as it worked out, we ended up moving back to Singapore. We were in China, moved here. And I had the option where I could either try and find a job here in my original field, or I could look at exploring starting my business. And thankfully, my husband agreed with me and he said, yeah, go for it. it was harder to get jobs here in Singapore at the time for foreigners, especially my age requires them to pay more, etc. So yeah, I explored it, and I'm so thankful that I was brave enough, but also that I sort of found that path now rather than 2-3 years later. So as much as it was a really hard journey, and obviously only touched on parts of that journey, there was a lot, I think, that pushed me in that direction.
And so tell us what method of coaching do you like to use? That there's different methods from what I've been told by other coaches.
Yeah, no, there is. Predominantly, like I did my certification through Jay Shetty, and so it's associated with the Association of Coaching. And his method is based around, like, he has his own framework, but they bring in parts of positive psychology, and then also the GROW model. So what I tend to do initially, I'm sure you've spoken to coaches about this. When you start, you've got like all these bits of paper around you. You're like, I'm following this framework, and I'm going to do this, and these are the questions I'm going to ask. But I think as I've become more experienced in doing and trusted myself, it becomes just focusing on how you can really create that space for that person to find their journey, their way. So it's a really interesting thing. Like, I would use the basis of what I've learned, but I'm also, as I work with more and more clients, I'm learning what works best. And that's a lot there is about trust, and a lot about trusting myself that I can just hold the space for them. So I always have like my crystals, and I have my candle next to me, and I always do a little bit of just a grounding beforehand to sort of just be open to allow them to experience what they need and find what they need and give the support they need. So there's a lot of intuition used, but I do obviously use the basis of what I've learned. And I appreciate that it's always a learning thing, because there's so many different ways that people can help a person, and it depends on them. Like, even recently, I had a client I was working with, and she came back to me with another issue focused around trauma. And she asked if I knew anyone that could help. And that's not something I specialize in. So I found someone, thankfully, in my network, and I was able to refer her on to them. They're going to work together, which is amazing. But it made me realize too, that is that something I want to help with? Like, is that something extra that I need to learn? And I think it did feel like a bit initially, I think you feel like a bit rejected. You're like, oh my goodness, I should be able to help this person. But it's recognizing that there's so many different ways that you can help a person. Yeah. And you've done this bit, and maybe it's best for someone else to come in now. So yeah, not sure if that answered it specifically, but it's effectively like the grounding is this, but then it's also tapping into energy, I think, and just really helping that person where they're at.
So I'll just go back to about mental health, what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
So I specialize in fertility, and I see a lot of women that come to me, and they've already been to the IVF specialist, IVF doctors, and they've been through the things that they have to go through to try and fall pregnant. Is I don't know if you've ever know anyone or yourself experienced it, but it's not an easy feat, and when they fail, when it doesn't help happen for them, they're just devastated. And have you had much to deal with that mental health side of the fertility?
Yeah, I haven't had anyone in my coaching experience. I haven't actually worked with anyone in that predicament, but me personally, I've seen friends who've had IVF and have had the losses, which has been, like you said, and it leaves a scar. I've also, like with my second child, I saw an acupuncturist in Melbourne who, because I was so scared about potentially losing that child, I saw an acupuncturist and naturopaths to help me, just to reassure me when Western medicine couldn't step in and reassure me that everything was okay. I was able to go to this person, and they were able to sort of just bring my anxiety down. And I think, interestingly, after I had my daughter, my second child, I experienced, I would say, high anxiety. I didn't have postnatal depression, but I had a high anxiety afterwards. And when I went to the support group, they, like you were sort of sharing, they were able to, just one session, link everything back to, I'd never dealt with the trauma I'd experienced of having lost a child in between the two of them. And so it was really interesting that when you come to mental health, I think people may say it's the child that you've had. They might say it's that specifically, but I think if you've had that journey, like you would know and you would witness, there's a lot that kind of gets dragged along with it. And I think for me, I was focusing so much on having a healthy second child. I ignored everything that had happened before because my sole focus was that. So I imagine you must see it once they do hopefully have that baby, there's still that leftover trauma or just stuff they haven't yet dealt with. And I had to deal with that. And thankfully, I was able to meet the right people who helped me straight away. And mine wasn't, once I had that connection, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to acknowledge that. And then I can start healing from it. And I think sometimes it becomes here and now, this is the problem, as opposed to there's all this other stuff that's behind here, right, that we still need to heal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that, and that's another problem is some ladies can conceive, but they just can't go full term with their child. So it's devastating. But but from a physical point of view, the ladies when they're preparing for in vitro for the injections, that they actually have to take a lot of medication, a lot. I didn't realize how much they have to take until I started studying this, and they have to inject themselves in the lower abdomen with the
it's a lot of hormones, isn't
medication.
it?
Yeah,
from what friends have shared.
Gonatropic hormones. That's what they're called. The medication, I should say. It's not a hormone. It's a medication. It mimics what the body produces. So, and they show me the bruises where they're sticking their needles in every day, and then I speak to some partners as well, and some of them have to do it for their for their partners. They have to do because they can't do it themselves. So because I imagine you'd probably be okay for the first couple of days, but then after
the pain, and also the pain,
days,
right?
Yeah, you'd be like, I don't want to do this. You get someone else to do it. So,
so how do you help them? Like, so when they come to you, you're helping them because you've got your herbs plus your acupuncture, haven't you? And you have a mix of that. Is that sort of how you help a person?
Yeah. So that basically it's just getting blood into that area, depending on where you want to send it. So it's because endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, they're the main three culprits. Vulvodynia is another one. Well, they just don't want to have sex with vulvodynia because it's painful. Basically, it's the vulva is painful. So they don't want to be touched anywhere near there.
But they want a baby. Yeah.
Yeah. I still feel so sorry for them. But basically all I'm doing is I'm just tricking the brain into sending morphine to that area or whatever is required. Whatever is required, whether it be estrogen, progesterone, naturally. So and basically also is sending blood to that area because blood supplies everything. It supplies all our hormones. It supplies morphine. We produce morphine. So there's many different types. We produce and they're called enkephalins. Enkephalins are the same thing, hormone, and they basically release morphine into the bloodstream, and more importantly, where the painful area is. So that's basically what I'm trying to do, and so it's this, and that's what I say to women is it's like your blood vessels are like a creek or a river. When the creek has plenty of water going through it, your blood vessel has plenty of blood flowing through it. Then you'll see that the sides of the banks are nice and smooth, and any boulders that are in the middle, eventually they break up and they get taken downstream. Well, it's the same thing with fibroids. It's the same thing with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Same thing with endometriosis. If there's infection or if there's boulders, the infection is the gunk. So the infection represents the gunk around the outsides of the banks of the river, the creek. Same with your blood vessels. and the same. The boulders are like your fibroids and your polycystic ovarian syndrome. So same thing. It just breaks it up and it takes it downstream, where to the kidneys and liver, and then you either pee it out or poop it out. And that's as basic as I can make it.
Yeah,
I can get more technical.
I got that visual. Got that visual.
I can make it more technical, but that's the basic way of explaining it. And that's what I'm saying to you is when they go through these physical traumas, because that's what they're doing. They're jabbing themselves every day.
Hoping with no certainty. And there's no certainty they're going to get that baby.
Yeah. Correct. And the other thing is when it doesn't happen, they went through all this.
And then it's that part of like, I know myself that I had a miscarriage between my two kids, and it feels like you're a failure. And I can imagine, I don't know how many times I know of friends and people I've met who've had untold amount of treatments and not held each time, or had a miscarriage or whatever it might be. And that is a lot of processing and getting yourself back in the game. And that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is I can understand why these ladies don't feel like whole women. They don't feel like a whole woman. They don't feel like they're functional because of that reason. Because and then the other thing is when it's all over and they get no result, they're in pain anyway. They're in pain, physical pain, because they didn't resolve the problem in the first place, which were.
Yes, which means that if they had one of those symptoms
fibroids or endometriosis or polycystic, they still didn't.
Well, I mean, I'm in the perimenopause stage right now, and I recently had an operation about fibroids to remove, and I was told I was riddled. So that's at my age. And what I learned recently, and I'm not sure if this is something, is that I think it's medical intuition. Someone told me that the fibroids are a big part of denying the feminine energy, which makes a lot of sense, trying to control the world. I don't know if that's something but that was something that was shared with me. And then when you were sharing about, like, just that visual you just shared right now about what's happening, like the river as such, and I'm like, that's what it feels like on the outside as well. It feels like you've just got all this stuff that's just stuck there, and that comes with pain and discomfort and feeling awful, and it drains you. It's miserable.
That's the blood flow. So that we are as old as our cardiovascular system, pure and simple. We have a fantastic cardiovascular system. Then that's the problem, is as we age, that cardiovascular system gets damaged, and that's why we age. That's why you look at an 80-year-old, they got purple hands and feet. 90-year-old, they got the purple hands and feet. It's because they've damaged the blood vessels between the heart and the hands. We're all going to go through it eventually.
Get old. We've got to live. That's why we got to get busy living, right? That's why.
That's exactly right. That's the whole and that's what I say to people. Would you like to live to 100? And they say no.
Because they see themselves as being old with purple hands and feeling,
and then, not functional, and we're watching it ourselves. I'm watching it. I watched it with my parents. One passed away at 55, with rare type of cancer, and the other one died horribly at the end. The last 5 years of his life, my father, he was incapacitated. Basically, once they took his driver's license off him, that was it. He destroyed it.
Independence gone.
You see what I'm saying? So, see what I'm saying is, we should be feeling abundant even at the age of 90. And like I talk about my grandmother. My grandmother was a perfect example. She was 91 when she passed. She worked every day, pretty much most of her life, and she always was doing something. Even at the end, she was in a thrift shop. She was volunteering. Her partner passed away, my grandfather, he passed away. So, and
She's happy now.
She just kept going, just kept on doing things, kept on living. Get busy living.
Rather than waiting to, oh, I'm this age now because society tells me they've taken my driver's license away from me, so then I must be old. They've done this, so then I must be close to death. This hurts, there's a choice, isn't there?
Well, there's no advice. What can I do to reverse this? How can I stop this from happening? So see what I'm saying? It's all medication, and that was the difference with Granny, Granny Grace. What a name! So they tried to give her the medication. See, they tried to, and she said
she wouldn't take it. Was she stubborn? No. She sounds stubborn.
Yeah, she wouldn't take it. She ended up having a heart attack, and then she's arguing with them that she had to go back to the thrift shop. She's arguing with them, to get back to the thrift shop because she has to do some work. And about a week later, she had a heart attack and passed away in her sleep.
Yeah.
And she was still driving.
Of course she was.
That day. Of course. She was still driving that day. That day she was driving.
Because she had a determination.
Yeah.
There was something in her that was just like, I'm not giving up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the way it should be. That's the way everyone should be. And that's why
I remember my grandma she was 89 when she passed away, just before she was 90. She had cancer. But I went to see her a few months before she died, and she was still lucid and stuff. And I remember going and seeing her, and she would have been riddled with cancer. And she got up because I was there, and there's a couple of others there, and she kind of knew. She knew that was probably the last time she was going to see us physically alive. And I remember her just walking around the room on her Zimmer frame because they'd said she needed to move to get things stimulated. Then she was trying to eat and all of this. And I had gone to the doctor with my mum, so I knew the state of her, where all the cancer was and that it was terminal and all this. But it was just like, I'm like, here's this woman. She's 89 years old. And for us, because we're there, she's doing her best to be present and to just be strong. Even though I think about a couple of weeks later, she sort of deteriorated, but she found that within herself. I don't know how she figured it out, because she could have just gone, I'm just, I'll just wait to die. But different to your granny, but in the same sense, she had that underlying, I can do this. And I remember her sitting there going, I need to eat. So she'd tell herself, I need to eat. And then she'd eat something, like my mum would feed her or something. I need to walk. So she'd get up. It was almost like she's just willing herself to do these things. And when you see that, someone going through that, you're like, damn, there's something there about mind over matter. I know her body in the end, was not strong enough to keep her there, and she was ready to go. But at the same time, in those moments, you're like, yeah, there's a strength within her. Something was just inside of her to give her that mental strength and ability to just to be strong in those moments.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, so you've explained about the method that you
back
use.
to that.
So give us some examples of people that you've helped, especially with their mental health.
Yeah, I find everything. It's really interesting. One particular person that I worked with recently came to me looking for a job. So unemployed, was wanting to get back in the workforce, felt like, suffering. A lot of the people I tend to deal with suffer from imposter syndrome, that self-doubt in their abilities for whatever reason. That could be, from what I see, highly successful, but something's happened that's made them feel less than. So coming in with that, struggling with that, basically wanting to get a high performance mindset. That was the goal, because ultimately they wanted to get that job. And it was really interesting. We went through just the initial sort of part, and we were focusing on, okay, what things can you do, ticking these boxes to help you be more visible on LinkedIn, for example, all these kind of things. But interestingly, it then went back into a lot more, like, where did this thought process come from and all that. And a lot of it went back to, it wasn't that I took them back, because I'm not a therapist, so I'm not a trained counselor in that sense, or psychologist. So I'm very aware, if you take them back to a memory that's come from their childhood or something, I'm not going to leave them in that place. It's more just, where do you think this came from? And then bringing them back to help them out of there. But it was interesting. A lot of what ended up coming up was a lot of things, the way this person was showing up was very much based on things that had happened in their childhood and the way they'd been brought up and things that had happened in patterns. So a lot what I do is, you spot that pattern along the way, then it's understanding, and it's almost it's like bringing the dots together, right? You have all these dots and then it's connecting them all for them but allowing them to do that. And that's what sort of happens is you kind of, in a way, through conversations over a couple of sessions and through this person being really open and sharing as well, which is super important. I can imagine in your space, they have to be open.
That helps. That helps.
Otherwise, you're pulling and you're trying to strip out that. But this person was really great at being open and sharing about just different things. And I'd be like, hey, you mentioned this. Do you want to tell me a bit more? And then we'd go down this road. And when we put that all together, it came into this really, to me, it seemed like I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the reason why. But I had to allow this person to get there. So it was like, this is interesting you say this. Have you thought of it in this way? And they're like, and then it became this. And then it was just this moment of like clarity that this person had of, oh my goodness, because of this, this, and this, I am doing this, this, and this. So recognizing the behavior that they're doing now as an adult and understanding that this is because of this unmet need back here, or what was happening when you were a child, all these things happening have been continued in your, you talk about the limiting beliefs, but that has continued in your adulthood, and you've just worked out ways to cope with it. And then it was really interesting. It wasn't that I was able to fix that as such, but this person was able to now see that that was something that was originally really just driving his behavior, and was able to then go, I can see it's different and it doesn't control me as much as it did before. And being able to have that ability to be able to see that this is what was driving it. Not saying that I've dealt with all of that. Like there was nothing that's something that probably needs someone else to actually work with him. But it was actually recognizing that. And I think seeing that moment when someone just goes, oh my goodness. And then it all just comes like, it's like, oh my, and also like, a few months onwards to check back in with this person to see that they're still able to, now that they have a job. I didn't create that job, by the way. I helped them with the mindset. They had the job to be in that and showing up in a different way versus the way they did before. And so there's that, I don't know if I say specifically, I'm going to help you with your mental health, but it's through that, unpacking that and finding those little root causes of what's going on and what's driving that, which we know, a lot of unmet needs of not feeling like you belong or connected or loved or whatever it might be, understanding that and recognizing that that's not real anymore, that you were this younger person or this person that was just looking to be loved or not abandoned or whatever it might be. So that one's a really beautiful example. And then another client, same again, dealing with lots of imposter stuff. But through that person also sharing a little what's going on in their life, we were able to follow those little, almost like those little streams and those little creeks that come off the side. And we were able to kind of bring them all together into this, again, another perspective that this person was able to see, oh my goodness, I'm doing this because of this. I'm doing this because of this. I'm doing this because of this. And then they had that choice. And so, well, what do you want to do about that? Because you can choose to continue that same path. You go, well, actually, I'm really happy. I'm happy like I am. It's all good. Because there are lots of people, right, that are. There's nothing wrong. They're actually happy. But then what you see will be when it shows up in their body later, because they've not dealt with it.
They can say things, but the body,
so you get to see them
that's
a
why
little bit later.
The pulse.
Yeah, you've talked about that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so so I give them the choice. You need to tell me everything now, or
I'll figure it out later. Do they look at you like, what do you mean? No, what? No, we'll figure it out.
It's not an exact science, but I can narrow it down to what's really going on.
Yeah, because you've shared that before, and it's really amazing when you share how, I think you were saying it like when you go to events and the kids come up and then you can tell them they had a broken arm or they have a stiff neck or something like that, right? Like, wow. How
do you know that? Yeah, because there's no placebo with kids. They just tell you.
They love it.
They just they don't. There's no filter. They just tell you what's going on.
Yeah, so they either tell you you're good or you're not. You make
well, I think that they think a magician. He's a magician. How does he know this stuff? So yeah, so yeah, that's awesome. That's some very good testimonials.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that you're doing that, Caryn, because we
me
need
too.
our society, all societies, even in Singapore,
Hmm.
they all need help with their mental health.
Yeah, and it
It's
really
not
is.
getting any better.
And I think it's really interesting because I guess I definitely find in the space of like coaching, there are a lot of coaches, and there's some that are, everyone's got different people you find, and I think it's really interesting when a person has a bad experience with a coach, or they go and they're wanting a specific thing. I think it can be hard sometimes when you're coming up against that as a coach, but then at the same time, I think there's just that deep belief if someone doesn't want help, you can't help them. You have to. I guess I'm definitely learned. It's about consistently showing up, and being there and putting stuff out. There's lots of social media. It's obviously free to do that stuff. People can watch it, and hoping through that the right people will find you, and that you attract them, and that you'll be able to help them the way they need the help. But some people are just really like, nope, not going to buy into that. I don't need it. I don't need that. I don't need it. And I just think any sort of thing in terms of the professional services, depending on where you're at, just having that extra support. Once I found it, I was just like, oh my goodness, where have these people been?
People
Like,
being, yeah.
why did I not know about this? Yeah, because it was just having someone that's not your partner or your trusted friend that you can just share things with and just unpack it all is just really special.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. You need to find the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's like I say. I don't want to bag the GPs, but not all GPs are created equal.
Well, yeah, I think that's the same with every profession, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I understand why people want to ask for a second opinion, because if you're not getting answers with someone, you need to go and find someone else.
Yeah.
You can't. I quote Einstein: keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Is the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Buzz Aldrin said also he didn't just go to the moon. He said some quotes as well. He said you can't help everyone, and those and a lot of people that you can't help are only after attention.
That's a good one. And it's interesting because I was doing this. There's a guy called Jim Fortin, and I found, I don't know how I found it. And he talks a lot about, he has this process that we do have, and he talks about how we create our own labels. And it's one of those things when you recognize it's about identity, right? It's like, what's the identity that you're creating for yourself? And on one of these groups, someone shared about, in the personal development space, that they had done all this work on themselves. They said, like, I've done all this work and I still haven't got that much further along. And I can't remember the exact things that he wrote back in the kind way. He said, look, can I be openly honest with you? But to give you feedback, it might help your perspective. And this person's like, yes, of course. And so they were saying that they were doing, obviously, all the personal development, doing all these webinars, doing all this gratitude, all this kind of stuff, but never getting anywhere. And he said, have you thought that maybe you've created an identity of a person that is doing that? It's almost like they'd created identity to be stuck in that place, that this identity was that person that was always striving, but never coming to, because they're not allowing themselves to decide what it is they actually wanted as such. And that's not the exact words, but it was something along that lines. And I had a thought, I'm like, yeah, because I guess there is sometimes it's more comfortable to stay in that space of struggle, as opposed to actually, even people coming to you. If they come to you and you end up finding out there could be a risk there to say that they're actually not able to have a child, is it better to stay in that place of, I'm not obviously not saying that this is the way, but is it better to stay in that place of, I'm trying, as opposed to actually recognizing where you're actually at? There's so many things you could put it in. And I think for people, some people believe, no, I'm all good, I'm fine. Like I find that with people that I come across, and I'm like, I can support you with this, no, I'm good. No, I'm fine today. I'm fine. You're like, okay. But then they still come back with the same problem, maybe a month, 2 months later, or even a year later. They're back in that cycle. It's just a longer cycle. And it's really sad when you see that. But then I've come to recognize that that's just who they are at the moment. And there's not much, I can't force them out of it, because it's really hard when you deal with someone that just doesn't really want your help. And it's like, okay, I'll work with those that do.
We all have problems. Like I have problems too, but I put 2 hours aside every day, 2 hours a day, every day on this temple.
For you,
because
that's
I have
amazing.
to. I have to.
Yeah.
I have to.
Because you know that that's what you need to do.
Yeah. Because if I don't look after me, how can I look after others? And that's the same. If I need help from others, I'm not. I used to be. This is. I'm getting older. I must be. Because when I was younger, I never ever asked for help.
Yeah, me
I had to do it all myself. Now I ask for help. I ask for it because I know it's going to be too hard on me eventually.
But also you asking for help shows others that they can ask too. Through you openly asking it almost breaks down that barrier.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
it goes both ways.
I think so too, and I would be the same. I think I recognize that there was a lot of same not asking for help, because I think when you did at a certain whatever age, you didn't get it, or you got told off for asking, or something happened, right? That wasn't nice. And so I think you learn.
I think it's the idea of others failing me. But that's my problem. That was my issue.
So right.
That people wouldn't turn up, or they just wouldn't do something for me. And I think,
and then you're disappointed, and that's not a nice feeling.
It's why ask. And I think that the problem is I didn't know how to motivate people to be able to do those things.
So you learned that's such an interesting thing. So you learned when you were looking at it going, they didn't turn up, you turned it back on yourself to go, what could I have done better?
Yeah. So now,
what could I learn from this?
Now I know what steps to take to help them. To help them, so that then they can help me.
Yeah, that's a really great way of looking at it. I like that. I think it's basically, which is so true, isn't it? Because when I definitely find, like, if I get triggered by something or something happens and I get really annoyed, previously my go-to would have been, oh, well, that's their fault. Oh, and I'd go down that trail of like, well, cut them off or whatever, run away, whatever it might be. Now it's kind of like, okay, what was going on with me? Like, why was I, then I'm reflecting, like you were saying, I'm making sure I'm, at the end of the day, I'm sitting there writing down and getting really annoyed with myself, and then recognize, oh, there you go. That might be it.
Don't get me wrong. Like, there are some people they just want the attention. I think Buzz was right. I think Buzz was right. He obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely. They just want to stay. They want to stay in that space, and they want to be seen as whatever that is. Yeah. And that's just the way it is, right? It's so interesting. I love that. It's a really good perspective of that one that you just sort of said about, because particularly, like, I imagine, like, I definitely find as coaches, you put yourself out there a lot to kind of help more people. People will sign up. You get, like, say 20 sign-ups, whatever it might be, and maybe half will turn up or 2 will turn up, and you're like, what's going on? But maybe they're also dealing with their own stuff, aren't they? They've got their own things going on. And what you're then looking at going, how can I make it less stressful, less confrontational, less whatever? They obviously had the intention they wanted to, but something is happening along that journey for them that's stopping them. Or they are, like you said, they are those people that just want the attention and just want to go, yeah, but have no intention of actually turning up. But yeah, it's a good perspective. Thanks for sharing that.
All right, so I'll move on to the last 2 questions. We've done well. We're up to 50 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we have. Oh, geez. I just saw that. Sorry, everyone.
So we'll move on to what's your ideal client or avatar, Caryn?
Yeah, so I think we sort of touched on this before. It effectively is it's a professional woman in the corporate space, a person that's either wanting to stay there, But it's finding that they're sort of thinking, I want a promotion. I'm wanting to negotiate a salary pay rise. I am not entirely happy in this space. I'm having maybe relationship colleague problems, and I don't know how to deal with that. I'm feeling like an imposter, those kind of things. And then there's the person, the professional woman that's saying, I'm done with corporate. I'm ready to figure out what's next for me, but I'm really quite scared about that, or I'm not. That's going to be a massive impact on my life, my friends, my family, people around me, and I don't think it's possible. So I either stay in corporate, but I don't want to. Can someone please help me here? And that's sort of where I help people to kind of give specifics. And it's really just, it's not saying anything wrong with a corporate. There is corporate toxicity, but it's also saying you have a choice. Now, which one do you want to choose? And I know myself I shared my journey coming out of the corporate space. There was a time when I loved it up to a point. I look back and I think, oh my gosh, the friends I made, the experiences I had, what I learned. But there was a point when I just didn't anymore. And things changed with me. And there was a lot going on. And I was just like, no, I have to be done with this. And thankfully, I found a life coach that really helped me through huge transitions in my role, coming to new countries, figuring out my business, all of that. And I was so grateful for that. So being able to help others with that as well in either space, sometimes you just need that extra kind of boost and someone in your corner that's going to be like, yeah, no judgment. Let's help you out. What do you want to do? How amazing is that? Like when you have someone you can lean on, and you have that moment and you're having a really tough time and you just contact them and go, I'm so sorry, but I don't know what to do. I'm just all over the place. And they go, hey, and they just boom, boom, boom. And you're like, oh, thanks. And you learn these tools and these tricks. And I definitely, through that time, have learned so many different things that help me. Like you said, when you spend 2 hours on yourself, I know myself, there's certain things I must do every day. And when I don't, like if I can't get out because I had COVID last week, you get a bit antsy and it's like, okay, well, how can I find that something else? I can do meditation. I could do more reflection, and that helps me if I can't go outside. So yeah, really important. Again, I kind of went around, but that's kind of, that's the person.
Thank you. So anyone who's looking for that are in the corporate world or looking to change jobs, give Caryn a call. And I'll go to the last question. So what rules would you go by to attain lifelong longevity?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I definitely think it's a mix of, like, I think there's love, and it's people go, no, but I think you can show yourself love first, like you said. If you don't look after you, you can't be there for anyone else. And I think love doesn't have to be telling yourself you love yourself every day, even though that's super helpful. It can be doing things for yourself and putting yourself first and not feeling bad. And when you do feel bad, because I did for a long time, doing things, and people will actually also criticize you and make you feel guilty for putting yourself first sometimes too. It's learning it's okay. And the more you do that, you can build that. And it's about those boundaries. So definitely focusing on love and loving yourself first, and looking in the mirror and looking at yourself and actually being grateful that, you have stretch marks because you've got 2 beautiful kids, those kind of things, even though that feels a bit not so good. And I think really just being really appreciative, and with that, then gratitude. And I think if you can doesn't matter if it feels, I learned recently, which I'm sure is that to really, even though I have this perimenopause things, is to really just be grateful for what I do have, and to express that gratitude, and to not focus on the hate and the, that awful energy, because when I did that then drains me more, and I guess feeds it. I don't know if it does, but someone said, it kind of feeds that nasty stuff going on. So really focusing on, even though sometimes it is really hard, to really show gratitude and love, and do things like just try different things, like find things that fill you up with joy, and people as well. Surround yourself with those people and just focus on that. And it could be the most smallest thing, right? Just looking at, be open to receiving stuff that comes your way. Definitely. And just protecting your energy as well, though.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Thank you very much, Caryn. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome, Dr.
You're watching the Get Busy Livin podcast, and it's been a pleasure having you on, Caryn. You're looking
Yeah, it's
great.
been really
And
I didn't realize this was almost an hour. Sorry if you're watching this. Hope you put it on fast, we'll cut you.
55 minutes. You've done well. You've done well. We had a bit of
to.
a hiccup at the start, but yeah, we got there. So, and we had
cut
out. We had internet cut out. We had all sorts of things.
I'm sitting there and Joe just keep feeding on a frozen frame. But yeah, thank you, Dr. Scott, for inviting me on here. I really appreciate it. I'm really grateful that you did.
Thank you so much, Caryn. Much appreciated. And also put your details too, Caryn, so others can check it. You can put it on my Facebook profile, Scott Fox, or I'm on LinkedIn as well. That was live on LinkedIn as well. So same thing.
Oh, cool. I'll just check it in there.
And I'm also on my YouTube channel. So my Scott Fox YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, no, I think I've subscribed to that. Well, I know where it is anyway. Thank you. I'll do that.
All right. Appreciate it, Caryn. Thank you very much, and have a great day, guys.